If we have several, Councilmember O'Brien, Licata, and Burgess. In that order.
I can't remember what I was going to ask.
Okay, Licata.
You know, my primary concern at this point, may change, is seeing how this streetcar system ties into the larger transportation network, and in particular Sound Transit. And it seems to me that if I'm commuting into the city on Sound Transit, I may be coming from the north end or the south end, but presumably the time between King Street Station and the Sound Transit Station on John, if that's where the one's located, Denny?
It's from Denny to John.
Okay.
Yeah, there's several entrances.
That time between those two stops in Sound Transit is going to be far less than if I got off and took the streetcar and took the streetcar to First Hill. I mean, that looks like a very circuitous route going up and then back down. So I'm thinking that if I'm approaching from the south end on Sound Transit, it's more likely I'll get off at the Denny station, and then from there use the streetcar to get closer to the First Hill Hospital complex.
Okay.
So I guess what the information I'd like to get is, and maybe this is for central staff to look at, is, or SDOT, to get their estimation from Sound Transit of how this system's configuration could best work to meet or improve their numbers for people taking Sound Transit. Now, if it doesn't make any difference, then we're using the streetcar for a totally different purpose, which is basically an internal circulator for the neighborhood, which is fine as well. But it doesn't really link up as much as we had expected it would with Sound Transit.
Sound Transit, the MOA does allow for Sound Transit to be quite involved along the way in terms of the construction and the decisions made like that. But the MOA is very clear that the City Council selects the route. So assuming the project meets the minimum scope of work that's outlined in the MOA, which is actually rather vague, Sound Transit is not likely to probably, do some sort of technical analysis beyond what SDOT is preparing in terms of the ridership and travel times.
Well, I mean,
but hopefully we will be able to use the information SDOT prepares to make that our own assessment, the city will, in terms of how to best maximize ridership to the light rail line.
And could I add just a couple things on that? I mean, I do think that travel time is one of the key criteria to answer your question. Also, we are working with Sound Transit staff as we go through alignment assessment and getting their input. So we can certainly, describe some of that as well.
Yeah, I just want to get a better handle on what's the purpose of this streetcar network. Is it part of an integrated transportation system, which means increasing ridership on Sound Transit, or is it more of an economic generator for Capitol Hill and to help people who live on Capitol Hill and First Hill get back and forth? And if we could accomplish both, that'd be great. But is there a balance between the two? Are we sacrificing one for the other? And that's the sort of analysis I think it would be, I would think, helpful for us to decide where we want to put public city money into. Yeah,
I think those are very well put, and we'll be talking about that. And I think we would say that it isn't just one or the other in terms of really the ridership isn't the end in of itself. It's really the broader objectives of livable, sustainable communities and what transit does to support that. And it can do that in a variety of ways. And some of that is the connection to the long haul system, and some of it is also the circulation within the center city. So to the extent that we can do both of those well, that's what we're aiming for.
Sure, ideally, right.
Okay, we need to keep...
Sorry.
I had a couple of questions. Yes. First of all, I agree with Councilmember Rasmussen. I'd love the Broadway line to extend all the way to Aloha. And I would hope that SDOT would keep us informed about where we need to make critical decisions along the way, either to add funds for design or whatever needs to be done. I had a question, though, Ethan, about the couplet, the 12th Avenue couplet, and also the Cal Anderson Park loop. Are there other systems in the country where those kind of systems where they're separated, where the where the two-way is separated by a couple of blocks, does that work in terms of maintaining and building ridership?
Wesley? I mean, South
Wesley?
Union.
Well, we have,
Only for turnaround, though, does it do
Yeah.
that? Otherwise, it's the same route.
No, it's
it's one block apart, but I think we haven't found any examples in the U.S. or globally of that big of a separation of a couplet. So that would certainly be new, and that puts a burden on us to analyze what that would mean. And so there are couplets, lots of examples and nearby of couplets that are about a block apart. They tend to be, flat between the two stations and in that, maybe 300-foot range. So some of these are.
I wonder if we can help you save money and time by eliminating some of the preliminary routes through, I don't know, through a resolution or something, but still leave 2 or 3, because this one, to me, from first glance, looks like it would be a lovely sightseeing type of a route. You go around the park, but I'm not
What's
sure
your
it really
real opinion?
serves, the transportation needs very efficiently, very quickly and conveniently. So I'm just wondering, well, I know it's good to try to respond to a lot of community requests. That we have to also keep in mind how many reasonable alternatives should we be looking at, considering the length of time that we have and the amount of money we have to spend for planning and.
Right. Well, and that's why we're asking to move quite quickly here. We feel in that we are hoping to have a council action in April, which would mean that there'd be a mayor's alignment recommendation sometime in March, and we would hope actually to be at the Transportation Committee, possibly at both March meetings. So I think clearly the exercise needs to move toward one alternative, and we also agree that we want to be efficient, and our intent is to do the environmental review on the selected alternative. We could spend a lot of money and time, going into great depth on all of these, but we think we have the criteria laid out in terms of your decision on alignment, and we think that we have a pretty aggressive schedule laid out before you, and I'm hearing that you think that's appropriate, if I'm interpreting that right, so that's good to hear.
Does anyone disagree? All right.
I think we'd also like the opportunity, once we get the preferred alternative, if we think we're going to spend less of Sound Transit's construction money, and I'm not sure we will, but if we find that because of lower construction costs, we will spend less than they've allocated, we would like the opportunity, I'd like the opportunity to be able to go back to Sound Transit to argue for applying that money to the extension, even though the memorandum of agreement stops at the Capitol Hill Station at John and Denny.
Actually, the MOA does include the option of going back to Sound Transit and asking to extend the streetcar beyond John Street.
So let's try
we
to.
did contemplate that if we did not spend all of that money, or as Councilmember Rasmussen mentioned, if we found other federal funding to use toward the extension, we could do that as well.
Right.
Yeah, I seem to remember that was a big point in our approving it,
So
was
that
that flexibility.
That reinforces your statement about eliminating some options and moving
Yes,
quickly
try to
so
save
we
costs.
can save money.
Right, so we can
To
go
help
back
pay
to
for the
Sound Transit to see if we can get agreement to extend it down to Aloha.
Okay, great.
Okay. One other thing, maybe a couple of others. I was reviewing the Capitol Hill Community Council's recommendations that I would be interested in following through on. And that does relate to the two-way bicycle track between the sidewalk and the parking lane, what they call reclaiming the street for pedestrians and bicycles. Do we have to begin planning or including that now, or is that something that could be considered later? I don't want to foreclose that, that request or that design option.
Right. We've already asked our consultants to include that in their, next phase of analysis. Now, traditionally, the details of that, don't necessarily need to be fully fleshed out until preliminary engineering. But, we may be able to move more quickly in terms of knowing how well that would work. What we'd like to do is, do some traffic analysis of that, and, you know, probably more detailed discussions with the bike and ped boards, with the design commission to inform that. But it's definitely, you know, it's an intriguing idea, and so we're already starting to look at that.
There are a lot of suggestions here that really could improve the appearance and safety of Broadway and the use of Broadway by pedestrians, bicyclists, as well as transit users, including removing the center turning lane, and then they have quite a list. So,
Great.
All right. Are there any other questions relating to this? All right. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Ethan.